Hello, friends! Welcome to episode 261 of Storyteller Conclave. This is a show all about helping you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can, whether you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level. I'm Sara.
I'm Rob.
How are we doing, Rob?
You know, one of these days, I'm going to just feel good about the soundboard again, but today is not that day.
Today is not that day, my friends. We shall not go quietly into that good night.
It's not
but
too
she'll
bad.
go out kicking and screaming and subtly tweaking the soundboard dials.
I'm just barely watching this meter just decide it's gonna do whatever it wants, and I guess that's fine. There's a certain level of this that I guess I'll just have to accept.
Yep.
Hopefully it's not a complete nightmare for our last episode for our listeners who are out there, both those who are listening to this later and those who are listening to this right now. It seems that we have people from all over the globe.
Live chat is popping tonight. We've got the Mad Elf, Hulavu, Subjet, Violent Menace, Knox in the Box, Owenography from over in Ireland.
Thank
Welcome.
you so much for waking up.
Yes, thank you for waking up and or staying up late, Owenography. We appreciate it.
We truly do. So, and I'll ask the live chat that if things start to get crappy, please let us know and I will adjust.
Yeah,
I will adjust some stuff. But
absolutely.
We've only got a few quick mentions at the beginning of this, and mostly this is just me being a terrible person who was communicating with people who have various projects that they're working on, and we're just like, hey, can you highlight us in one of your episodes a little something? And I was like, yeah, we might be able to get to that. Maybe. You know what? We're running out of shows. I have to talk about these places. So
yeah.
So a couple Kickstarter mentions that came across us. And I'll say this for what it's worth. We're not doing D&D content exclusive, and a lot of the stuff comes through as that. And unfortunately, it doesn't fit into us doing system spotlights as much. So we try to focus on more narrative games. But I will say this: we have a couple good Kickstarters that I'd like to point out. Songs of the Spellbound Sea, which is by So Many Robots. It's an adventure in 5e. It's got new classes, new subclasses, new spells, all kind of stuff. But it also has mechanics for ship strongholds, seafaring, and sea combat.
Oh, that's your jam right there.
Yeah,
huh?
so it's tentatively scheduled to kick off on June 11th. So keep an eye out for that launch. If you're a 5e person and you're looking to do a little bit more swashbuckly stuff, this might be your jam.
Yeah.
So again, Songs of the Spellbound Sea by So Many Robots, June 11th. Watch for that Kickstarter. I'll be putting up a link after the show with notations that we've got. So
yeah,
maybe I think I actually have some media kit stuff that I can throw up there too. Sons of the Singularity are launching the Sassoon Files 2nd edition. Now, they did this, and this is a Call of Cthulhu in Shanghai. And it's the new edition basically doubles the content from the first edition. So it's got more scenarios, more campaign settings, and some improved production values. And they're kicking off literally on the 11th. So just a couple days from now.
Oh yeah.
And it looks great. It's everything you would expect out of Sons of Singularity, in their art style, their feeling, the way they lay things out. So if you're, I know we've got some COC people in our Discord who are always interested in new things, and this, from what it looks like, is going to have a 3 kind of faction group who are all kicking around, doing. One group I think is cultist, the other one is a more direct connection to the occult itself, and then you've got the investigative team who is trying to stop everything of a little bit more of an adventure kind of style. But either way, May 11th, that's the Sassoon Files 2nd edition. And lastly, this hit the desk literally this morning. Pellegrin Press has just launched on Kickstarter 13th Age 2nd edition.
Oh yeah.
Now people have thrown this at us, say you should do 13th Age. If you're interested in stuff, you should do 13th Age.
I see references to it all the time in r/RPG where they're like, I'm looking for an alternative to 5th edition because it's really burned me. What's a good alternative? And 13th Age always floats to the top on this list.
Yeah.
So a 2nd edition of that coming out is enticing for anybody who likes that sort of high fantasy D&D model.
I completely agree. And so it's they've done 7 years, 200 gaming groups that after the 7 years did 200 gaming groups for the second edition alone, and basically made quick cut decisions of, we're not making a giant book, we're going to do a player's handbook and a DM's guide. But it basically, for those who are unfamiliar, it basically streamlines the crunch and builds story elements with it. But within the crunch of combat is also this kind of automatic accelerator to get you through combat, almost in a cinematic kind of way.
Oh, good, yeah.
So it really does, like, grind you to a speedy. It's if you're familiar with The Princess Bride and the Inigo Montoya fight, it's kind of like that, where like everything builds to a finish.
Yeah.
You know, so you're not wasting time basically grinding down hit points that never go down.
Yeah, I've heard that of 13th Age, where it's basically 5th edition that respects your time. So, yeah, it was also, like, funded on Kickstarter in 62 minutes?
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So a lot of people chomping at the bit for this one. So
yeah,
that's
so
pretty cool.
good Kickstarters coming out. And, I mean, I will say, like, we had talked about this earlier, that I feel like the OGL crisis, and I'll use that in air quotes, did a great job at allowing those who kind of had ideas and weren't sure if the market was ready for something to basically step up and say, it's time to kickstart, let's do this thing, let's get some press out there, because it gave a chance that D&D wasn't the only thing being talked about.
If we were looking for a sign, that OGL crisis was it.
And it really opened a lot of doors. A lot of groups that were known but not well known are now well known. You know, it's not just Pathfinder as an alternative.
Right.
I mean, we were laughing about the fact that it was like, so, you know, the differences between D&D and, oh, you should go to Pathfinder because X, Y, and Z is like, it's the same system, just done differently. Like, newer edition, if you will. That's really all that it is. You're really not stepping away from much. So it's nice to see these other groups really taking the time to pick and choose between the mechanics that they loved out of multiple systems and create something whole new cloth.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that feels totally different, so. Hi. Feels weird?
It does feel a little weird. Like, now that I am sitting here and we have to, like, broach the topic of this is our final show and we're having our retrospect. I was literally fine up until this moment, and now I'm like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
It's going to be the last time we do this, you know?
Yeah, I entitled this show The Real BBEG is Time.
Yeah.
Because it is.
It is.
Like, that, the finish is, I mean, if we were going to put something on this, like, that represents kind of storytelling, is the finish. When you get to the finish of a story, it's emotional for the DM and storyteller just as much as it is for the players, because that means it's over. It's a relief, but at the same time, you want it to end right.
Yeah.
You want some kind of an emotion to come out of it. You want your players to feel gratified by the length or breadth or whatever the story really created, especially if it's more than a one-shot. But even to a distant lesser degree, a one-shot still has that feeling that you want that wrap to feel really good, but the more energy you've put forth to it, the bigger that feels.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that's why a lot of people's campaigns don't end. They don't have an end.
Right, because they don't want to let go.
They either peter off because of life changes, or they don't get a chance to wrap them in some meaningful way.
Right.
You know, so here we are, 5 years out. We set the end, and now we're here.
Yeah, you know, and I mean, I do feel I feel a couple of ways about it. Like, on one hand, it's like I said, it's not like we didn't give it a good go. You know, if we were ending this a year in of, you know, like, we did 52 episodes, that's all we had in us, I'd be like, okay, I'd understand if people were like, that's it, that's all you got. But we've done this for 5 years. You know, I think we've missed 1 week, I think, the entire time.
Yeah.
Even when there were things like freak power outages over here that put us out, even the pandemic didn't really slow us down.
No.
You know, I don't think we missed anything by the pandemic. I think we worked around it. You had set up the home studio, and we did our last episode at Podcast Detroit, and then by the time we did the next week, we still had a few bugs to work out, but you had the infrastructure put up.
Yeah. Because we figured out the numbers and everything to make it work, and realized it was cheaper for us to just do it ourselves, and, you know, we didn't need the extra engineering at first, and I mean, I'm not going to say that there isn't a value for that, but like without the knowledge of knowing how to do this stuff, you definitely need it.
Yeah.
But and even when we were sick, we were able to separate and do it over, have Discord and things like that. So it made it work.
Yep. And it's funny to me that like even through all the pandemic and stuff like that, we still kept our schedule up, and it was only like a month or two ago that you finally got like laid out with COVID, and that's you were like, I'm not even rescheduling. Like, I'm not going to be better by Thursday. This is not happening.
Yeah. It was a bad idea.
And I'm like, that's okay. I'm not even attached to that topic anyways.
Yeah.
Let's go. You know?
Yeah, we just walked away from it. So,
but yeah, man, like, out of 5 years, we've missed one episode, and
I just got to pop up on my tablet for an update, and all I can think about is you saying almost all the time, like, do you guys think I've got time for an update?
All right. So yeah, funny story. See, you guys don't get to see all the little behind the scenes stuff here,
Let's
right?
talk a little. You know what? We had talking points and shit, but let's talk about a little bit behind the scenes.
Let's talk about a little bit behind the scenes here. Okay, so
you guys get some truths.
So our first year of this podcast was at Podcast Detroit.
Nice place.
Yeah. It's in Ferndale, Michigan.
Yeah.
And actually, I used to live there. I really like Ferndale. And
I had actually done a podcast recording with another podcast there.
Yeah, because when we started the show, you were like, I know a place.
Yeah, like I literally had been there, I want to say 6 months prior, and done a piece where it was another podcast discussion group, and they just happened to be doing a piece on cancer surviving, like the.
Oh yeah.
So I agreed to do that piece with them, which was good. It was a little cathartic because it wasn't terribly long after our situation, but it gave me a really good image of them and what they could set up and what they did. And I was like,
sure.
This is solid. Like, if I don't even have to think about this. Like, I don't have to do the work effort.
So that was before I had my laptop though. So I was operating off of a little Samsung tablet, like a little 10-inch Samsung tablet. Pad A, I want to say it was something like that. Tab A.
Tab A.
Yeah, it was a Samsung Tab A. And like without fail, every single time, because I mainly used it for the podcast, right? So it was only really ever when I cracked the thing open for the podcast that the thing would say like, "Oh, it's been a week since you last opened me. By the way, there's an update." And we would show up, I don't know, about 10 minutes before, get ourselves settled into the studio space and whatnot. We'd do a little mic check and whatnot with Kate. And inevitably, I'd be like, do you think I have time to run an update real quick? Because this thing is popping up on my thing. And there were a couple times where, like, it was 6:59 when that update was finishing up. And there was, I think, once or twice where I was, like, trying to do the intro from memory because it was still updating and I was still pulling up the show sheet.
Yep.
So it became this joke now when, like, for 5 years, we haven't been at Podcast Detroit for 4 years,
Yeah.
And every single time I sit down, I'm like, oh, crap, it's 6:58. Do you think I got time for a quick update?
Short answer is always no.
Always no.
Always no.
Always no. Never trust it, especially now that I'm running Windows.
Yeah, agreed. So we had that, and then you reminded me tonight at dinner of a funny story. So when we were at Podcast Detroit, we had this lovely engineer who was hilarious and wonderful.
We miss Kate.
We miss Kate a lot.
Wherever you are out there, I hope you
listening.
I hope you are doing wonderful. I hope you're happy. I hope your dog is doing well. I hope your husband's doing well. I hope you are just thriving, moisturized, in your lane.
Yep. Well fed,
sunshine on your
Cheers
face.
But while we were there, we had a lot of funny, ridiculous moments with her. But she had threatened a few times that she was gonna like Nerf gun assassinate us one night, and we kind of kept that in the back of our head. And so we came in one night, and the place was dead silent, which it never is. There's usually somebody there who's squeezing in a podcast or something. And so one of the booths are always lit up, or she's working with, finishing something up so the lights are on and she's working on something in our studio, but nothing. And her car was in the lot.
Yeah.
And it's not a big place.
It's not. It's really
It's like
not.
two little hallways and a bathroom. That's pretty much it.
Yeah. Three whole studios that are like 10 by 10 rooms, basically.
Yeah. And so we go in and see this, and immediately our heckles go up, and we're like, "Oh shit, it's on!"
So you had Nerf guns in
I
your
did.
car because we were kind of like the
Edging our
threats were
bet.
getting a little real, you
Yeah,
know. And
yeah.
I think the last time we thought we were going to bring them in, but you forgot to bring them in,
Right.
Right. So this time we go there, and like the whole studio's dark. And we had remembered to bring the guns in, so like this time it was real. It was on. So like there we are, like quietly cocking our Nerf guns, you know, getting them primed. And we're like, Kate, come out. We just want to talk, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, so much fun.
And she comes
So much
blasting out of the corner.
Anyway, she started blasting.
It was great fun. It was great fun.
Oh, so
there
good,
were so
yeah.
many little things and jokes and inside stuff like some of you, if you've listened long enough, will remember us talking about this at some point. Of Kate had another show, and they didn't have a topic and something else, so they came up with, "Is it mac and cheese or porn?"
Right.
They would play a clip, and you had to decide whether it was mac and cheese being stirred or porn.
Yeah.
And I just every time I hear a bowl of mac and cheese, I can't stop laughing and thinking of Kate. I really can't. So there's a bit of behind the scenes for that.
Yeah.
But early days. Jeez.
That's what we get for doing our own sound stuff now, because
Yeah. We suffer because we only test it once a
we
week.
we don't have a Kate.
We don't have a Kate. We test it once a week.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
All right. So that all being said, Violent Menace. Ew. Yeah, agreed.
Right.
It's funny. It was funny at the time. I agree. Had to be there, I guess. So we had some talking points just to kind of keep us honest before the questions, because we had a lot of questions that came in.
I do actually want to talk about some of these talking points though, because I think some of these are, because like we spent 5 years dispensing, you know, knowledge to the masses.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so giving our experience out to people at a great value, and I wanna see, like, how does it affect us? How did we come out of this? You know, so like what did you learn? Like, what do you think the biggest thing in doing like research for the show and our discussion topics and stuff like that? What do you think was the biggest thing that you learned in the tenure of our show?
Oh, you're gonna have to like narrow that down. There's a lot of things.
Oh, sure. Fire away. Give me the bullet point list. You know.
All right. I'll start with what I learned about the show, about just doing the show. I think the biggest thing that I learned is that even if you decide you're only going to do a weekly show, that's not enough content. Like, it's never enough content, because content is always your marketing, really. Like, your show is your show, then there's your content for marketing. And I had no idea about that.
Yeah.
Like, I knew we were going to struggle with being an audio-only podcast, that this wasn't going to go on YouTube, that, like, we would basically be on Spotify and nothing else. We weren't part of a network or anything like that. And so we were going to be at the end of the listings everywhere, every time. But I had no idea how hard it would be to try and get numbers at any level to be noticed. So it was a bit more eye-opening than I wanted it to be, and it definitely, like, we felt it every time.
Oh, sure.
And I worked really hard at trying to get content together, but it's not a full-time job for us.
Right. And
so
neither of us are like into marketing.
Right.
You know, we don't know what we're doing with it, and
luckily we have Sam.
At least for me, it was always a struggle with you know, can I muster enough self-worth to promote myself?
That was a huge part of it. Like,
of just I'm that type of person who doesn't want to be intrusive. I hate advertising. You know, I hate when I'm receiving advertising, because it's like, if I want to know about this, I'll ask you. You know, and so then when it comes to marketing our podcast, and it's like, okay, well, we got to get the word out about this, and it's like, I don't want to bug people.
No.
I want people to listen, but I don't want to have to tell people about it, you know?
Yeah, I thought it was funny after all these years when I, after just lightly telling people about things, and they're like, oh, so, you know, it's like, so what's new with you? I'm like, oh, my podcast is coming to close. You have a podcast? Yeah, I've been doing it for 5 years. I've mentioned it a few times. Oh. Well, what's it on? effectively D&D is what you would consider, oh, you have a podcast? That dude, oh my god, like I brought this up a few times.
This is the fourth time we've had this discussion in the time we've known each other.
Yeah. So, but I think that was the other part, is that if you're not in front of people and it's not common, it doesn't exist.
Yep.
And so, like, I mean, even if we were the top content creators for podcasts, like the actual podcast itself, which we were in some of the markets that we were in, we still weren't being listed anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, it isn't until recently now that we've actually started showing up crazily in listings.
After 5 years, now that we've decided that we've had a good run and we're gonna sunset the podcast, now we're starting to show up places.
I think the other day
it only took us 5 years. That's great.
Had 6,000 impressions on freaking Spotify.
Yeah,
on their front page.
Something like that. Yeah.
It's like, what?
Right.
Like, where did that come from?
I don't know.
I don't know. I think I'll leave that one for last, but I think the community side of things is that I always thought of OSR as basically like the bros squad, you know?
Okay, yeah.
Almost near to like Warhammer bro level.
Yeah, sure.
You know, where they're diehard, they do what they do, they stay in their lane. Anything else is weird. It is too weird for them to step away from it.
Right.
And I honestly think in the 5 years that we've done this, OSR has figured out who they really are.
Yeah, that's fair. I think
it's not as broad as it used to be.
It's probably also that we've figured out who they are, and we've met in the middle.
Yeah. I mean, I think the OGL crisis helped with that a little bit.
I mean,
because it gave a division and an understanding as people started looking around.
Sure.
You know, when the bombs were falling, they were like, "This isn't going to affect us." What are you talking about?
I think Worlds Without Number or Stars Without Number was probably the biggest eye opener as far as the OSR thing went, because people refer to that as an OSR game.
Yeah, 100%.
And I'm like, wait a minute, this is OSR?
Mm-hmm.
This is cool.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I would play this.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't be top on my choices, but like, if this is what OSR is, I've got to really reassess what OSR is in my mind, because in my mind, at least coming into this, I always understood OSR to be like the old, 50-year-old grognards who grew up on first and second edition D&D.
What do you mean second edition?
Right, exactly. who are like, no, you don't play Dungeons and Dragons to tell a story. You tell it to do a West Marches Hexcrawl campaign, and you suffer, and every other, game session you lose a character and you re-roll them, and you know what? You like it. That's what you're there for. And I was like, that just sounds horrible, But, I mean, I'm not saying that isn't also OSR, but it's a much broader umbrella than I originally was led to believe, and so I'm glad we've come to that understanding,
Yeah.
I've got a much bigger respect for it now.
So, I'm gonna ask you this question.
Sure.
What did you learn about yourself?
When we started this.
Sure.
When we started this whole thing, you got to remember, I was running a D&D 5th edition campaign.
You were.
And I was running it because I thought it was the best alternative, or it was the best alternative for the type of game that I was doing, because Elder Scrolls is ostensibly just a very close to D&D style. Like, it's got some things renamed. You call them Atronachs instead of Elementals.
Sure.
You call them Daedra instead of Gods.
Sure.
But like, yeah, really, it's just a proprietary D&D setting.
Agreed.
So I was like, okay, that sounds like a D&D thing, and I think probably the biggest evolution I went through was, especially with our system spotlights, broadening my horizons of the game. Like, I thought I knew a bunch of games, and I really didn't.
No.
I really didn't. And every single system spotlight that we did showed me another aspect of the hobby, a different way of telling stories, a different way of thinking about things, of doing things. And through that, I switched over to Savage Worlds, and I mean, I'll be honest with you, I love Savage Worlds. I absolutely adore that system, but I almost wonder if at this point I'm kind of growing past that. Don't worry, I'm not going to change my campaign.
I don't expect you to change your campaign.
But, you've been telling me to get out of Savage Worlds for a while, and I I'm ready to.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
It was a really great leap from Dungeons and Dragons to Savage Worlds, but then like I'm shifting even further from that, and I'm seeing that Savage Worlds is still maybe a little too crunchy and a little too combat focused for me.
For the stories you want to tell.
For the stories I want to tell, yeah.
Yeah, and I dare say for your players.
Yeah.
Like the people that you tend to bring to your table. I'm not saying that there probably wouldn't be a place for it, but like a lot of your players want more story, just as much as mine do. Don't change your game yet.
Don't worry, Matt Elf. You're everybody's safe. No,
Yeah.
I do love Savage Worlds way too much to change it at this point. It is not stabbing me constantly like D&D was.
Yeah.
Knox in the Box is asking here, I want to know the very moment when the honeymoon is over and people decide 5e was perhaps hyped too much for them. What was your moment? I think it seems like it's a question more towards the broader chat here, but
I don't know. Like, when was my end of 5e? Ooh. I think mine was actually during my game when I was running 5e, and I you know what? I want to say it was the gate fight with the orcs was my vision point when you guys were fighting.
Oh, that fight, yeah.
And
in your game,
I had to figure out how I could make that fight less than 5.5 hours of combat.
Yeah,
and it hurt.
Yeah.
It, like trying to figure that out and still make it meaningful.
Yeah. Yeah, I think because that was about the point in which you started kind of going like, I homebrewed some rules for mass combat that's going to turn it into a cinematic experience. We're not using the things on your,
because it was just
so
painful to try and to either break that up into multiple scenarios, which would be month after month. Mm-hmm. And I was just like, I can't do that. I need this to close in a scene.
Yeah,
and I need it to feel like there's some struggle there. And when it was done, there wasn't. Because a long rest made everything better.
Yep.
Like, you guys weren't exhausted when you were done.
Yeah.
Like, going into the next thing, you were fine.
Yep.
Not a big deal.
I got my 6th level spells back, so I could dish out 8d8 damage to a 60-foot radius area.
Right.
That pierced resistances, and yeah.
So taking you guys from that fight and putting you guys into, effectively, the prison fight was nothing. It was just moving on to the next day.
Yep.
And it was then that I realized, like, this doesn't feel right.
Yeah. Yeah.
I would have had to set rules early on with my players in session 0, or talk about how I was going to ramp up the difficulty of the game as levels went up. And at that point I was like, why? Like, now it's just a matter of tactics.
Right. Why are you trying so hard to fight against the system that you're using to tell the story you want to use? Yep.
Right.
I get you.
Right. So I think that was mine, Knox. I think that was my moment.
Violent Menace would like you to know that Cortex Prime is waiting for you. Violent Menace, I pulled out the Cortex Prime book the other day just to flip through it again. I didn't give it like any serious, like I haven't put anything together.
I have a challenge for us actually.
But I think I sat down. I was rearranging some books on my shelf to make room for the new adventure book and the new Trinity Continuum book, and I picked up the Cortex Prime book and I was like, someday.
So I have a challenge for us actually out of that.
Okay.
I think we should try the Tron game, Cortex Prime.
Cortex Prime? You want me to do Tron and Cortex Prime?
Yeah. I think we should develop it at Cortex Prime and then let you run it.
Okay.
Yeah. I think it makes sense.
Yeah.
Because then you can decide how you want it to feel and then craft it for that feel.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I think that'll also change the way you feel about the idiosyncrasies of knowing enough about tech, because it won't nearly need to be that big of a deal.
Yeah, that's an interpersonal thing, though, and what I need to do is I need to convince myself that I am good enough as a storyteller, and then I need to convince myself also that my friends are my friends and not jerks that will try to sabotage my game.
Well, in all honesty, and I love that I can come back to this, it's not like that we can jump and swing swords, or anything like that.
Exactly.
It still comes down to the fact that you as a storyteller can still play the same game that anybody who's not a talkie can say, I'd like to intimidate.
Right.
Oh, so you're attempting to attack the firewall. Got it.
Yes, exactly.
Just simplify it.
So you want to open a port in the firewall? Cool. Give me an attack roll. That's not how. That's how it works. Give me an attack roll.
That's the mechanics that we're dealing with. So, or whatever we decide to make it for Cortex
exactly.
Prime. So
and let's Violent Menace does say he's down to assist. So
I appreciate that. We might pop some questions at you as time goes on.
We may very well do that, man.
You never know. We may record some of our conversations about it. Who knows?
Also true.
So, all right. I kind of want to say one other thing in this before we move on to our lessons. I will say that one of the things that I did learn about us was that the show gave us something to hold on to through a lot of really rough times. Through COVID, through some rocky moments, through depressions and loss of energy and all kinds of weird work-related crap, that even if we were, like, exhausted, we could still find a spoon or two by the end of the show.
Yeah.
And survive through it. So I think that was a valuable point, that, like, it reminded us that routine was important. Yeah. And routine with people is more than obligation.
If nothing else, it gave us, even for the work that putting the podcast together involves, the fact that it eats up an entire Wednesday evening, so we have to schedule around it and stuff like that. But it was a moment every single week that forced me to sit down across from my friend and talk about something that we both love. And, at times, a lot of times, like these microphones and the headphones and the soundboard and all that just fade away, and we're just having a discussion. We're having a great time talking about some aspect of the hobby that we've got opinions about, Yep. And I think that's, like, to me, that was always great, because that's how the podcast got started, Yeah. So we were sitting in a Big B coffee, I think.
Yeah, sounds about right.
And we had like a 3-hour discussion. I remember that was the same discussion. You told me that my storytelling style was meat and potatoes, and I have carried that with me ever since.
I'm glad.
It was like 3 hours of discussion. We're just nothing but just swapping storytelling tactics and ways that we could better our stories and unfold certain plot events in ways that are dramatic but also interactive for the players. And
I will admit to this, during that, if we could have recorded that conversation and replayed it now, I think there are aspects of it we both look at it and say we were idiots about that.
Oh, I'm sure we were huge idiots. We got five years more experience now,
Yeah.
But that's how the whole thing got started. Was two friends over coffee, having a long discussion and going, God, wouldn't this be great if we just had microphones in front of us so people could share in on all this experience that we've got, And a lot of nights where, through all the, like you said, depression,
we even had arguments,
trying times and stuff like that. Yeah, I mean, we would have arguments.
I mean, we had arguments and then still had to do the show.
Yeah,
but we got through everything.
Hell, a month and a half ago, I wasn't exactly the happiest person with you, but
Sure.
we talk about it like adults. We put our feelings on the on the table,
I think in some cases it forced some of that curve of a reminder of, like, that's a moment in time.
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
not us.
Yeah, and it's like, hold on. This person has my best interest in mind. Like, yes, a slight was perceived. I'm going to tell him what happened.
Yep.
He's going to say, I never meant to do that, because of course he didn't mean to do that.
Right.
He's going to say, I'm sorry, and we're going to move the hell on, know? And same thing with me, if I step on your toes, you let me know, and I've got your best interest in mind. So
yes.
It's a good grounding moment for us,
Yeah.
So
definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Lessons learned.
Like about running games and stuff? Or
let's focus, like, what are some of the core valuable lessons as a storyteller?
Oh, man.
I right off the bat, I'm going to say, do not be afraid to kill your darlings. And I mean that in the sense, not your characters, stop that. Don't think that way, and definitely not your players. But I mean, like, when you have an idea and you craft it and you spitball it and you put it all together and you start looking at it and it looks like it's too much, just stop and shave.
Yeah.
You're not writing a novel.
Yeah.
Write less. Let more happen during the game. Let more evolve out of the game. And one of the things that I really mean out of this is write less before the game. Write more during the game when you're listening.
Mm-hmm.
And that's hard. That is really hard.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the hardest lessons to learn as someone who is crafting story and following the players, is taking the time to listen for when something excites them through their character, or their character through them, however you want to look at that, and say, that's something I need to put in. That's important. I need to put that down in some way.
Yeah.
And that's so hard to do when you're in the moment, because you're thinking on so many different levels of trying to make it right that you lose sight of those moments. And I think that's one of the most valuable lessons that you can possibly do in storytelling.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I think that would. I mean, that's definitely one of my takeaways there. I think I think I've said it a lot. Is, know how your NPCs move when they're pushed against. I think was something I picked up along the way. Because I think coming into the show, a lot of my character writing and plot writing was very formulaic and a little railroady. Because I wanted that cool cinematic experience, and
you were thinking 3 steps down the story.
Yeah, and
with like programmatic if-then statements.
Right, almost like flowchart style stuff, and you can't do that because your players will always, if you plan for A, B, and C, your characters will always choose option D,
or 7,
or or epsilon.
Yeah,
and you can't do that. You can't do that and then try to shove them into, even if you have 3 very cool options, you can't try to shove them then into A, B, or C.
Right.
Organically, it's not going to work and it's going to feel railroady. So. You just have to know how the pieces move when they're pushed against.
Yeah. And
then on the fly, you just have to be like, okay, let's see here. This NPC wouldn't like that outcome and would probably try to stop them. And they know this other person who is associated with the villain, so they'd probably go to them for help. Okay, yeah. No, I can get this back to the villain. Okay, so NPC A tells NPC B. NPC B works for the villain. Villain's going to try to stop them. How long I think it's going to take? Probably a week. So, yeah, they're going to get a week of free time out of this, and they're going to get ambushed on the road. Yep. Cool.
Okay.
And
if they're planning for it...
Now I know what my next encounter is.
Likely. If they start asking for information, someone might have seen this, might lead them to knowing about the ambush.
Yeah.
It just puts it all in the right perspective. But again, you're not planning. You're listening, you're watching, you're being reactive, and abstracting off of that reaction and not looking beyond the mountains, because it doesn't matter. So
the Mad Elf asks, wait, doesn't Thalion die in Plan F? Actually, Thalion and Theodane both die.
Yeah.
They're writing a play about it.
Yeah.
Thalion and Theodane are dead.
Yes, most definitely. If you can figure out who's who.
What about you? What's the biggest lesson you learned in the 5 years here?
I think the biggest one, like the don't kill your darlings, is definitely on my top of my list. I think the only other one is the idea of deciding the system and knowing what the system's trying to sell. Like, we really found that out by going through all the system spotlights. And I'm going to come back to that kind of as a system design thing, because realistically, like, there are rules about system design that we figured out by literally studying 40 of them, right? That were vastly different in some cases. And what made that up. But I think as a storyteller, you have to make that decision of whether it's just something your players are comfortable with and you're willing to accept its faults and try to adjust, which is going to be painful for you, or you find the system that meets the story style that you want to tell, and then help your players fit into it and work with it.
Yes.
And that so you're not having to shave a bunch off because it's not how it's meant to be played, right? You know, I think on the player side, as a player, one of the biggest things that's come back again and again and again is keeping in character. Always seeing everything through your eyes of your character. You're not playing a board game and moving a pawn. That pawn has motivations, they have goals, they have talked with other people, and the more you push yourself into the eyes and the headspace of that character, when you sit down at the table, the more you match their mannerisms, you understand where their thinking is at, what changed their thinking, where they're going. You know, the closer you get to understanding who you are acting as, makes everything better. And distances you from the reality, so that you can do things that you as a person might not do. Take chances, go to extremes, be responsible for an act.
Yeah, make interesting decisions. You know, I think is the big thing. Like there, you know, it took me a little while to find like Ravana's footing in your D&D game.
Yeah.
But once I got into that character, I found myself sometimes making like very subpar, you know, suboptimal decisions. Like when I got a hold of the Orb of Conjuration, you know, the orbs that we know directly to be conduits to an evil god. But man, there's a lot of power there.
Yeah.
And I could do some cool things. And man, if we had gotten a hold of that like just a little bit earlier and didn't know just how deep that rabbit hole went, I may have had to retire my character right there. But it would have made sense, you know? It would have made sense, and I'd have known it. I mean, Sarah sitting there at your table would have been like, "This is a stupid ass thing to do." But that's exactly what the character wants, you know, and would have made that stupid decision because it would have been dramatic, it would have been interesting,
would have been appropriate.
Maybe she'd have come back as a villain that you'd have to defeat later with all that power in her hands, you know, would have been cool. It would have been very dramatic.
Yeah,
but you know, I think if you're playing as yourself, you know, you're thinking, well, what's the optimal move here?
Well, not only that, but you also run all of your own personal risks and concerns constantly. And the whole point of role-playing is to not only play a role, but to be that role.
Yeah.
To take those chances, to be something different and try something different. Be extreme. So, yeah. All right. We did a lot of games. What did we learn about game design? I know not a lot because we didn't like hard focus on it, but I think out of it, we definitely came out with some serious points that made us look at systems very differently.
What did I learn about game design? Games teach you how they want you to play them.
Yeah.
Look, there's a theory that I've been reading just about like larger systems. Usually it's like social or governmental systems, you know, systems of laws and societal function and whatnot. So the purpose of a thing is what it does. So if there's basically no use in pretending that the system's intention was something different if what it accomplishes is something, you know, the school to prison pipeline, you know, for disenfranchised youth and whatnot like that. You know, that's what the system does. You know, it's no use pretending it does something else because that's functionally how it functions.
And even if you say that wasn't what its intent was,
right? It's what it does.
Right.
So you can label your game as, you know, having, you know, a storytelling, exploration, you know, focused gameplay. But if all you hand me is simulationist combat rules, that's what your system does.
That's what you're good at.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna sit down to this and, you know, read 80 pages of simulationist combat rules and go, oh gee, I'm really into the exploration in this game.
No.
It ain't gonna happen.
Or the lore or anything else.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah. Agreed. I think the other part of it was us really Pangea did a number on our headspace about
Find the metal.
And
Yeah.
you look for it in some games and you can't find it.
Yeah, you can't.
Because the mechanics and the system are so separated.
Right.
They don't fit each other.
And I think between those two things, that's really where like our ability to once a month just grab a completely new system we've never seen before, and just turn it inside out and then explain it to everybody in an hour and a half episode is, comes from is because you're looking for the metal in it. You pick that thing up and you go, what about this system makes it cool? What makes it different from any other system out there?
Yeah.
What in this game setting or system is cranked up to 11 and will make you look at it and go, oh, that's badass. Okay. And I am looking at it going, okay, I see all the gears. What wheels are these gears turning?
Yeah, what's the output?
What's the biggest wheel in this system of gears here?
Yeah.
What is the output? Yeah. What is this thing going to hand me at the end of the day?
Yeah.
What is it trying to do?
Yeah. And you put those two together, and if it doesn't equal the feeling that they're trying to say in words...
Yeah, you compare it to the label on the book.
Yeah, well, yeah, pretty much. Often the preference of, like, the game is a 1920s, horror game about living in the darkened streets of a fantasy world, right? And you're like, okay, great. And yet the game system is a combat heavy, and the narrative sections of the game are time based, high threat situations. Okay, so it's aliens, So basically this is an alien simulator. Oh no. There's intrigue and all these different groups and corporate. No, none of that matters. If literally the two don't sync up and create the feeling that you're supposed to get out of it, you added rules in the wrong direction. You're leaning hard. So yeah, I agree. I think the other thing that we found is show don't tell. Like, you can put a lot of words in something, but if you can't have a clear example of gameplay that doesn't take 2 pages to explain, like, that's hard. And then just the continuation. I think it's always cool to have a continued gameplay that leads into the adventure.
Oh, yeah.
That's just nice.
I always love that.
Yeah, and then less is more. Always. Like, if you can slim down your game rules to a quick start.
Yeah.
And it's still the game. It's not a different game, which, like, D&D cannot do. It isn't. Quick Start is not D&D.
Yeah.
It really is not. There's a lot of games that their quick starts are definitely not the game. They're a different game altogether. And I always find that funny. I always find that funny. D&D did we talked about that, did a really crappy job on it. But yeah, I think that's what I definitely learned.
All right, I want to do some of these like final messages and stats and thoughts on our part, but then I want to get us into some of these questions because
I agree.
I really want to spend the last part of the show focusing on the listeners who made this show so great.
I agree.
And discussing these things with you guys. Yeah. So a couple stats. Our top episodes were Worlds Without Number and Stars Without Number.
Yeah, actually, our System Spotlights were our top episodes.
Yeah.
The One Ring followed pretty close after that.
Yes. It's amazing. Like, the Worlds Without Number, or sorry, Stars Without Number, I think was the first one we did, and that was amazing that it got the outcome it did. It actually brought a lot of people to the Discord, a lot of people to the show that kind of stuck around. They were like, yeah, I showed up for Stars Without Number because I love that system, and I stayed for the rest of the show because I like you guys, so... if you're still with us,
thank you.
Welcome, and really glad we pulled that. One Ring, like you said, was close behind that, and then this one shocked the pants off of me. Was D&D hurting the hobby? My anti D&D rant from a month ago or so, whenever it was. I thought the pitchforks and torches were going to come out for that one. I thought we were going to have people messaging me in droves, going, how dare you talk crap about D&D? How dare you say our fun is wrong? And apparently a lot of people loved that episode. Yeah. So, I guess 5 years too late, I figured out that getting up on my soapbox and ranting about...
Well, so I think we positioned that in a good place where we weren't just trying to get, clicks from the OGL crisis, and
Yeah,
a few people who would literally post weekly of like D&D is dead, D&D's been canceled.
The D&D scandal just got worse.
Exactly,
yeah,
exactly.
Dungeons and Discourse.
I love how you went right to Canadian for that one.
No, I went to Dungeons and Discourse. Discourse.
I'm with you, but the tone was 100% Canadian. It was almost like you could have done that on Letterkenny.
Right.
So yeah, as far as like, I guess I'll say leaving messages that we kind of want to get out before we get into questions. I just want to say this and be exceptionally blunt for other content creators who are listening to our show, maybe for the first time. Maybe you're going through our stuff. Maybe you're just catching this episode, but steal our shit, please. This isn't theft.
We put this out there so you could use it.
Yeah, we are a community resource. Yeah. We're not a show. That's in the content of YouTube or frickin' TikTok. We're not here to make money. We're not here. We lost probably money a lot over on this, but the point is that we did this because we love it. We've got experience. We had the time. We learned a lot. But like some of you don't have the time to do that. Yeah. So take it. Yeah. Yeah, the whole point of the show was we wanted to share our collective 50 years, and which is now collective 60 years worth of experience with you guys, and hopefully we did that along the way. Even if you picked up one little thing that could help you in your home games, sure, mission accomplished. We feel great about that. Yeah, and some of you have way more followers than we do. And if it gets the information out and it makes someone's game good, fantastic. Yeah, that's great. Absolutely, that's great. So just pay it forward. Just take what we've done and add to it. Because in 5 years, some of the stuff that we're talking about isn't going to be the final say on anything. Like Einstein always said, like, prove me wrong. And he liked that plan, and it worked out. And, a good scientist and a good researcher will look at things and say, this is my perception. Don't take it as fact. Don't make this the only thing that you believe to be true. So learn, research, try things. Try it more than once. Yeah. Try it with different groups and prove us wrong in some cases and talk about that. Yeah, Keep the conversation going. But respect all gameplay types. Yeah, absolutely. If somebody wants to play OSR and grind and do roguelike games, great. If they want to remove dice, fantastic. Yeah, if somebody wants to play D&D 5th edition, they're wrong, but okay, Let them be wrong for a little bit, and then show them a better game. Yeah, maybe D&D 1 will be better. Right, yeah. Sure, 1 D&D or whatever they call it. Give them 5 games, and then give them the intervention. Yes. I kid. You're fine. All right, let's get into some of these Discord questions. Let's get to this first saucy question from Tim Saucer. What has been your most unexpected outcome from doing the show for the past 5 years? We missed one episode. That was the weirdest and most unexpected. I thought we were going to run out of topics, and we kept finding topics. Like, even last minute, we were able to, and I say last minute, 2 weeks before we were running out of topics, we were like, we need something for the next 2 weeks. We would come up with 14. And then sometimes we'd only have, a single sentence for a topic, and we would debate on what we meant by that sentence, 3 weeks later. When we were getting close to the show, we'd be like, what did we mean by this? And Sarah would have a completely different idea than me. And, we would talk about that and be like, is that a different show? Yeah. It was funny the number of times that actually happened where we had these things that we jotted down, 4 months ago, and we're like, all right, here's our topic. What were we thinking at the time? We got better about writing our notes about those things. No idea what we meant when we wrote this one line to describe this topic. I'm like, well, I can think of a couple angles. What about this? And you're like, oh, I was going a completely different direction. I'm like, ¿por qué no los dos? Let's go both directions. We would just separate them a little bit and do both shows. So, what about you? Most unexpected outcome? I don't know. I think kind of the opposite. I'll be dead honest. I didn't think anyone was going to listen to the show. You constantly thought that. I thought we were shouting into the void, and that we would never get discovered. The podcast, genre network, I guess. What the podcast is a very flooded media.
You know, anybody with a microphone, especially during the pandemic.
It's like the newspaper when TV came out. Like there was just so much newspaper and nobody, like people were reading it, but like what? You know?
Right. You're on page 17. You know who's going to read your little sidebar news article on page 17? Right? Nobody's going to see that. Right. And I think what was really disheartening was I heard at one point right after the pandemic started that like Amazon was out of microphones. Mm-hmm. Like you couldn't get them. Everyone was out of stock because everybody went home and they were like, well, what can I do to occupy my time and my creative energy? I know, I'll start a podcast.
Or do a Twitch stream or something.
Cool, you know? Yeah. So now there's even more voices, you know, out there.
And people were putting stuff on YouTube with just their phones and a microphone set. And yeah, just content creation all over the place.
But I think that the most unexpected thing is that right now we have a bunch of people in our live chat listening to us as we record this on a Wednesday night in Detroit, and they're sad to see us go, and that we've built this great community, and that we hit 260 episodes, and I mean. I'm blown away. I'm blown away that people heard us and people liked us after they heard us.
And we have people from all over the world.
Yeah.
In our Discord,
we got Owenography right now joining us from Ireland.
We had somebody, who's from Greece?
John of Thebes.
Yes, which is hilarious.
Yes. Yeah. We have Nevim, I believe, is French.
Yes.
And Kilky is...
oh, geez. We're going to be terrible.
Finnish?
Possibly?
I'm so sorry, Kilky. Wherever you are from,
yes,
in Danish, Finnish, somewhere around there. I cannot remember, and I'm so sorry.
Yeah, we're horrible people.
It's not intended as a slight.
And then across the U.S.,
yeah,
we had some listeners that were from Japan. We had some listeners that were in Indonesia. That weren't necessarily in our Discord, but we definitely were getting feeds from it. So it's interesting to see that almost 50% are listening outside the United States, which I love. I love that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Tim's second question, which I think is hilarious, is what one character from media that all GMs should rip off and include as an NPC of their game, and why is it Goldicott? So for those of you,
that's such a fan service question. Tim,
first off, thank you, Tim. We do love you, and the answer is Goldicott.
And the answer is Goldicott. Yes.
I'm actually going to throw a few in there besides that, just for the sake of play. But for those unaware, Goldicott is essentially a villain from Deep Space Nine.
He's a villain. He is
a Star Trek series
from Star Trek Deep Space Nine. He is written narratively as a foil to the commander of the space station, Benjamin Sisko.
Yes.
And he's ostensibly a space Nazi. The story takes place after the occupation of Bajor has ended, where the Cardassians, who Gul Dukat is a Cardassian, he was the one in charge of this military occupation and enslavement of the Bajoran people, and used to run the space station. The Deep Space Nine it used to be called Tarak Nor when Gul Dukat owned it.
Right.
And he keeps showing back up as this, and he goes through a couple different phases throughout the story because the Cardassian Empire kind of goes through some hard times and whatnot. So he goes from being this, statesman to like a disenfranchised freighter captain to back to being a statesman to weird fanatic,
just all over the place. But it all makes sense.
But his narrative arc is amazing, and he's brought to life so well by Mark Alaimo, fantastic actor, and the character himself. The essence of the character is that he is the smiling, respectable, cordial, and deeply evil person.
He's very comfortable.
In a lot of ways, I would liken him to, like, if you've ever seen Inglourious Bastards, the character played by, I don't remember the actor's name, but the main Nazi guy in Inglourious Bastards.
Yes.
How he's just, sit down, have some strudel,
Yeah. And he's so comfortable with who he is.
Yeah. And just so convinced he's right that, like...
Yeah.
he can just smile and just talk because he knows he's doing the right thing. You know?
Yeah, there's something to be said about that design, and I almost the second one that I was going to throw was that. The third one I'm throwing at is M. Bison from the original Street Fighter movie.
Oh yeah, that great terrible movie, but great line. You know,
well, not only the great line, but he showed insanity at its finest.
Yeah, the line is he's arguing with Chun-Li. And Chun-Li is all like, "You killed my father.
Like
you
he's
destroyed
making
my
drinks
village
for them."
Yeah, and he's making drinks at the time, and he's just like, "Oh, I think I see what's going on here. The day that M. Bison came to your small, forgettable little village was the most important day of your life. But for me, it was Tuesday."
Yeah, exactly. And he's confused at times.
Christoph Waltz, thank you very much, Okonography.
But like, he's literally confused by his own henchmen not understanding how he's trying to save the world.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's like they're you're not seeing it.
Right. Like the math is all there, buddy. Yeah.
Why do I have to explain this again?
Yeah.
He's not monologuing. He's literally trying to help those who are less intelligent than him.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
it's brilliant to see those kinds of characters because it gives you a proper view versus a comedic view of what those people can be.
Yep.
Done by amazing actors, incredible actors. So I applaud both of those.
I have to look up an episode title real quick because if anybody wants to know the essence of Gul Dukat, there's an episode I'm thinking of, and I want to say,
throw it in the links. Throw it in the links. We'll keep going because I don't want to go into this and turn this into the episode. But well worth it. Well worth it. All right. So
I want to say the name of the episode is "Attention Bajoran Workers."
Okay. Thank you, Knox, for the gift.
That's it. That's all I got.
Okay. All right. Knox asks, what was your show structuring process?
Absolute chaos.
I think initially it really was.
It really was. Show structure was largely my part.
Yeah.
Our process essentially was that we would have a pre-show meeting, usually just on Discord during our work days if we both had a slow period.
Yeah.
Sometimes on our lunch breaks, whatever.
Well, we should roll this back. Actually, we would first come up with show ideas.
Right.
And make a giant list, but the actual show would come off of that.
But right. So what we would do is we kind of have this big powwow, and we would so I have a tough time listening and typing at the same time. So usually there was quiet time in our meeting where we were both typing our thoughts in the Google Doc because Rob knew he could not talk to me while I was writing. He's
Not
like, "Okay,
all.
I'm gonna be quiet. You just write. You just let that stream of
Now,
consciousness
I
come
will
up."
say sometimes I would write for Sarah while Sarah was thinking.
Yeah, exactly. He would be like, "Oh, Sarah's ranting. I'm just gonna dictate."
Before we lose this, because we did that a few times where like one of us would get into a stream of consciousness and the other one would go, "That was brilliant," and I'd be like, "What did I say?
What the hell that just came out of my mouth? It was poignant. It moved me. What was it?
And then we'd have to dissect our way back through it. So yeah, but we'd come up with a structure. We'd come up with ideas.
Yeah.
We'd spitball like all kinds of points that we were going to be making about it. And this is outside of our system spotlights, definitely. Those were handled totally differently, but we would go through and kind of culminate those into a bit, not necessarily a flow, but just structured sections.
Yeah, like how does it make sense to talk about it? You know, what one of these top bullet points leads into the next logically?
Yeah, and also what doesn't fit.
Right. Because we would do that sometimes. We would just get on these rants and we would jot stuff down on our notes, and we would go back later and we would look at the notes and go, "Okay, that's a good point, but it has nothing to do with our topic."
Or it's too broad. This
Yeah.
should be its own show.
Yeah, there was a couple times that happened too. And then basically what I would do is I would make sure that we are setting the appropriate groundwork for our listeners. So usually we would start with a definition of like, okay, we're going to talk about bleed.
Yeah.
What is bleed? Bleed is defined as, letting your character's emotions bleed into your own. Okay,
Yeah.
boom.
Yeah.
What is it? How does it happen? Where do we start with it? And then,
Name it, define it, list its uses, give clean examples.
Exactly.
Best
and then
educational
once
process.
we had that groundwork, then we could start dancing around the topic of like, okay, what are other aspects of it? How does it show up at your blah, blah, blah,
Yeah, and sometimes the shows would literally come out of one of us because we had opinions, and like the other one would look into the show sheet, and it would just be full.
Yeah.
And the other person would be like, 10 out of 10, I have no notes.
Happened a couple times on both sides, and then there were the times where it was a less of a I had opinions and I wrote the entire show sheet. You're welcome, and it was more of a work exploded, life exploded. I had no time to look at the show sheet. Thank you for writing it all.
We had a few of those.
Yep.
And then Sarah's a master at taking that stream of consciousness and then putting it into a flow, without a doubt.
Well, I would say I'm a master,
no,
but
like
after 260 times, you get used to it.
Well, that's what I'm saying. It's like you learn to master it, and it like just came into an ability, and I got used to kind of starting in the flow and figuring that out, and so it got easier as we went on. Definitely.
Yeah, definitely.
But our system spotlights were different in the sense that basically we would cram session by ourselves the books. Figure out, like, maybe watch a Let's Play or two if it was really confusing, like, what they were trying to get across, or bits and parts of it, and then oftentimes we would always diverge from, like, you would always take care of the rule set, I would always take a look at the storytelling side, and then we would get together and do the same powwow like we normally do, and put it all together. And it was wonderful. Like, it came together really naturally.
All right, Subjet's taking off.
Oh,
good night, Subjet.
Good
Thank
night.
you so much. We love you. Thank you for showing up in the live chat.
Yes, stick around for more, or come back for more questions after what we got hour and 10 minutes in roughly. So
geez, yeah.
But all right, how did you prepare for
each episode? Do you have any tips?
We have lots. I could give lots of tips, but the biggest one that I would say in preparing for a show is prepare.
Yeah.
You need to have a guidance control and to keep you on topic.
Not only that, but just think about what is the scope of your topic. Think about what are the salient points that you need to discuss to convey that topic, and then keep it to those points.
Yeah,
because what I assure you, whatever you think is going to be like a half hour worth of content is actually an hour.
Or more.
Yeah.
It will always end up being more, and more is not always better.
Yep.
So.
All right, so Philly Fan asks, does the GM Storyteller imposter syndrome ever go away? Oh, my sweet summer child.
I'm glad the Discord responded to this besides us. The answer is yes and no. For those who don't understand, the imposter syndrome basically is that, like, you're not actually a storyteller or DM.
You sit down at the table, you're just stabbing blindly in the dark, you don't know the rules, you don't know the characters, your story sucks, and everybody at the table hates you.
Yeah, that is definitely imposter syndrome all there. The answer is no, and there's kind of a beauty to that, because it keeps you honest.
Yeah.
It really does. Things tend to get easier, and as time goes on, just like with work, like in doing a job, the imposter syndrome goes away when someone like asks you something and you just have an answer. And sudden, or in the case of like something happens in the game and you just know what's going to happen next. You have the scenario and it rolls.
Yep.
And suddenly you feel like a god again. And it's wonderful. Like everybody's having a good time. You're comfortable and excited. And you and then at that very moment, like, you forget that you were supposed to write something down.
Yeah, it's like that moment where, like, you know, as like a programmer or network engineer, you're like, well, that's stupid. Why didn't they just SSH into the TCP/IP? Oh, I'm doing the thing. You know?
I remember a dear friend who was who had stepped from one career, one large position to another, and they put him down for they were like gave him a scenario question during his interview with a bunch of people, and they were like, you know, well, here's our situation. Like, how would you fix and adapt this? And he was just like, well, first off, that's dumb. I wouldn't do that at all. In fact, I would lay out this separate structure upon this routing and do others. And as he's going through it, he's just like, oh my god, I know what I'm doing, son of a gun.
I'm doing it.
Exactly.
I'm doing it.
It's a weird moment when the groove hits you.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
it does happen. It does take time.
Yeah, you'll have glimmers of that, and if you're anything like me, you will go right back into the imposter syndrome. Yep. Until next game, when you go back into your flow state again, you'll be fine.
Yep. So
all right, so sci-fi tough guy, what sort of things draw you to a game world versus a game system?
That's a really good question.
That's a good question. So to me, game system is highly negotiable. I have to fall in love with the world, and then find the system palatable.
I agree.
But it's never I love this system. Okay, what's the world attached to it? It's always I love this world. What's the system attached to it?
I think for me personally, it's when I can completely visualize it within a very short time of being talked to about it.
Yeah.
I mean, 7th was so easy to visualize. The art matched everything about it.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you can read a description of it, or like just read the intro to the book, or even just looking at the cover of the book and hearing a description of the game, if you can close your eyes and go, okay, this is the type of character I would play. Cool, you're already on board, you know.
Yeah, art does a lot for a game, but at the same time, like the opening description means a lot to the game.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think that's what it is for me in the game world, is that if the game world that I'm looking at is not so vast and incomprehensible that I have to think about it too much, I can see a person living there, doing just normal things, not beyond the mountains. Like, what is the day in the life of a barber? Okay, that's not a main character, that's an NPC, but like, if I can see what's going on there without much of a squint, that's fantastic. Yeah. That's fantastic.
To me, I think that the relationship's a little bit like, the game world is the person that I hit up on the dating site, and then once I get to know them, the game system is like meeting their parents.
Yeah, that's fair.
If I don't like the game system, we can probably still translate that somewhere else and just...
Yeah, but I think it carries more weight for me now, the game system does.
Yeah, the game system definitely does, yeah.
If one person wrote the world and another person wrote the system and they don't jive...
Yeah, agreed.
I'll steal it. I'll just steal the world right out of it.
What game worlds do you love, but not so much the system? You can just say Shadowrun. It's fine.
Yeah, that's fair. I know you were leaning toward it there.
Yeah.
7th Sea 2nd Edition.
7th Sea 2nd Edition.
I would say for me, list, yeah. It's not a no-go, but it's definitely on the list because I love 7th Sea.
And to be fair, like, I really actually like Faerun. For the Forgotten Realms and stuff like that. Like, I thought that was a pretty neat world. It's very interesting. The Sword Coast is a cool place. Like,
I think it's too broad in some cases.
Sure.
It's hard to see a day in the life there. Yeah. It's easy to see an adventurer walking into a dungeon, but that's about it.
It's a little easier for me, but right. I've got more recent contact with it than you do.
That's true. But I would say the other one is Dark Souls. It's very easy for me to see the Dark Souls world and not. I would never touch that system. Ever. There's no reason to.
Fair enough.
There's plenty also other stories to tell in that world.
Yeah, that's I think the big other thing is that I think it's focused on entirely the wrong thing.
Yeah. And I think that's the other thing to be said about worlds, is that if you can tell different stories in the world than what they're portraying, and it still feels like that world. Like, the One Ring is kind of hard to do that in.
Yeah.
It can happen, but it is a one story. Mouse Guard is a one story world.
And see, I'm glad you brought that up, because the next question is then what game systems do you love, but not the game world?
I don't think the One Ring does. I think it's perfect for what it is, but the stories are too small.
Yeah, exactly. I absolutely I adore the system, but I think if I ran it, I'd have a hard time playing in Middle Earth.
I would have a hard time playing Mouse Guard a second time.
Yeah, okay. Yeah.
It's a one-time playthrough, like Portal.
I agree.
Once I'm done, like, I've played that.
Yeah, you've faced weasels and large monsters.
I've been a guard.
We fought a snake. You've been a guard. Yeah.
And it's nothing against the system at all, but I just don't.
But it's a bit of a one-trick pony, and once you've had that experience, there's not a lot of novelty to expand upon it.
No,
it's a tale of mice in the Mouse Guard.
You could, but the point is that it would take a vast amount of creativity to step away from that design, which is fine. Shadowrun can be said much the same way.
Plus, the Mad Elf will be running Legend of the Five Rings for us. So
Dem Rings.
Yep.
So there you go. All right, Captain asks, what do you both plan to do next? We kind of talked about this in the previous episode.
So I have to finish my Elder Scrolls game, and then figure out what I'm doing next after that.
Yeah, I would say something small.
Something small, probably. I'm also getting married next week. Oh God, it's next week.
That is next week.
And I've gotten really big into one-page rules. very recently.
Well, not so much a TTRPG thing, but
Not a TTRPG thing, but that's kind of what I've,
That's
it's
next.
hobby-wise, that's
true.
what's next
That's
on my
true.
radar. But yeah, I want to relax. Like the one of the big things that I've said this before is like that the podcast is starting to become a drain on me.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling a little less and less joy each episode, and
Mm-hmm.
I wanna step away from it before I begin to resent it.
Yep.
And the quality slips and stuff like that. Let's end this on a high note.
Yeah.
So what I'm really going to do next is enjoy having my Wednesdays back.
Yeah.
Um,
But it's not so much even the Wednesday. It's the other days that are needed to make the Wednesday happen.
Exactly. Because we're still planning on spending our Wednesdays
Yeah.
together as just like a friend night, to just hang out and be buddies. But like, yeah, it's losing my weekend because I have to cram an entire game system into my brain,
Mm-hmm.
And things like that.
I think for me, I mean, obviously, I'm going to be running my Tiny D6 game, and looking for the 7th sea in a different system, either Savage Seas or Pirate Borg, depending on how we want to do it. But I would say those are the two gaming things. Beyond that, it's just time. It's getting some time back, spending some time with you. One of the things that we talked about is like we just want to get back to going out to dinner, and like just having time to sit down and chat, like more than just that hour space.
Yeah, exactly.
Get back to doing tea.
Exactly.
Exactly. Because what's funny is we are currently out of the tea that we've been drinking for this entire freaking
you
show.
were joking earlier. You're like, we're out of Paris tea, so
apologize
that's
for my
why the
cough.
show is ending.
Yeah,
Because we ran out of tea.
yeah, that's it. Show's over because we're out of tea.
Yep.
Next 4 pound. When I buy the next 4-pound tea bag, Sarah's gonna look at me and go, "What show are we running?" Oh crap!
Right. I didn't get the memo.
So,
So do you have future plans involving podcasting or TTRPGs, news, interviews, or anything like that?
we've talked about doing some minor recording, but nothing consistent.
Yeah, we thought maybe like we might put out sporadic episodes. Like we've got some games planned for the future. Like I want to run Star Trek and Adventure and whatnot.
Right.
You're gonna run Tiny Taverns.
Yeah.
We may do like a postmortem
Yeah.
episode of like, okay, you're done with your Tiny Taverns game. How did it go? What did you like? What did you not like? What were your successes? What were your failures?
Yeah. And if I can find a reason to get Seth Skarkowski back on the phone, I think I will try.
Oh my god! I want to just move
miss
him up
him.
here to Detroit so we can hang out with him all the time.
I do
Like,
miss him. He was so much fun. He was so
such
much
a great
fun.
guy. Such a great guy to talk to.
Uh,
All right, so Nevim asks, do you have some regrets about the pod? No regrets.
no regrets.
Any regrets about the podcast? Episodes not turning out as good as expected. Subject not talk about anything like that.
I feel bad that we never made any connections with the rest of the community. Like sometimes you'll get crossovers that really click and things like that, but like I think that's one of the things about TTRPG community is that they don't do that.
Mm-hmm.
Like the maker community does that. You'll get assistive episodes and things like that where people cross over and they do comps, compilations and things like that, but it doesn't seem to happen in the TTRPG community. It's very solo. It's very, I have my content. I may talk about another content or review another content creator, but like to really riff and grow and review and talk about other commentaries doesn't happen.
Some of that though is the algorithm.
I agree.
I don't think it's the people. I think a lot of it is the YouTube algorithm and stuff like that. Because if they do a collab with another person, right, and that person's not as interested, if their audience isn't interested in that other person,
Right.
they're not going to watch the episode, and
Right.
then the algorithm is going to be like, oh, your views are down, so now I'm going to stop suggesting your next 5 videos.
I agree, and then their money's gone.
Yeah, and it directly impacts their bottom line.
I
So like, they
completely
can't
agree.
afford to do that.
Right. Yeah.
So it's unfortunate, but yeah, I think we probably could have reached out more and done more crossovers and collabs and stuff like that, but we never really did.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, as far as like topics that we didn't talk about or anything like that, like I feel like that's one of the reasons why we're ending the show is because we just found ourselves looping back on ourselves a lot. we were really straining to find niche little topics to talk about that we haven't done in the 260 episodes.
Yeah, we did a lot.
And it's hard to do.
Yeah, I mean, unless we started going into deep dives like we were with 202s, getting to like 300 level stuff would have been insane.
Yeah, I think we would have alienated a bunch of our,
I agree.
We've got like newer storytellers that pop up on our Discord all the time, and like, oh yeah, I just started running 5th edition like 3 weeks ago. I'm on my 2nd game.
Yeah.
And I found your podcast because I was like drowning.
Yeah, well, start with the 101s, please.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Let us know if you have questions.
We gave that advice more than once.
Yeah. No, I think it's good. So, second question, what makes you proud after the many years of podcasting? We had a lot of impact.
Definitely
our community is the most... See, the joy of seeing someone, I listened to this episode, I'm here now, thank you for helping. This changed the way I did this thing and it worked out. Like, that right there is all we cared about.
Yeah.
Those moments were the best moments ever. Or,
absolutely.
I tried this new system. Oh, great. Fantastic.
Yeah,
or I felt
absolutely.
more comfortable getting into the system after hearing your system spotlight. All of that. Like, just the little reach outs, the little commentaries and talking with people and touching, touching people in their systems and their tables and in helping in any way, pointing things out or even just minor commentaries. It was fantastic. It always felt good. Yeah, always felt good.
Absolutely. Every single time somebody came in and said, yeah, this episode really answered some questions for me or touched me in a way or yeah, just the best feeling in the world. Best feeling in the world that even a single person out there listened to what we had to say and
used some of that information and it worked out or didn't. Like all of it was great. So,
and I think too, again, I mean, 5 years we missed one episode.
Yeah.
I mean, how many other people can say they've got 260 episodes of anything under their belt?
And so many people took sabbaticals and stuff. Well, they'd be off for like a month. Easily.
And like, I find it hard to listen to other podcasts sometimes too, because like they get rambly and they get off topic and they're just trying to be funny with one another, but like the jokes aren't landing.
Oh, there's a lot of dead space.
There's a lot of dead space or whatnot. There's very few podcasts that I find listenable. And the ones that I do listen to, like, have a paid editor on staff to make sure that it's listenable. And I think with no editing whatsoever, I think we pull it off okay. Like, I don't think we ramble too much. We've got a good solid show sheet that we work off of pretty stringently.
Yep.
We keep it. Well, I mean, we sometimes keep it under an hour and a half.
We knew this was going to go long.
That's true.
So.
But yeah, no, I think from the very beginning, like even Kate was saying, like in our first couple episodes, she's like, most people come in here and they just ramble and they don't know what they're going to do. Like, you guys showed up with a plan and you execute it. Like, you're the best podcast that comes into Podcast Detroit.
Episode 3, she was saying.
Yeah,
that.
It was. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, so we were already in our stride.
Yeah.
We're already in our stride by episode 3. Like, we walked in with a plan and we executed it.
Yeah, we did good. We did good.
And we've only refined that plan over 260 episodes.
Yeah.
So, that's, honestly, I'm proud of what we've put out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
definitely.
There's not a single episode of this podcast I regret.
Yeah.
All right, so openography. Thanks for a great many episodes. Thank you for being here and listening.
Yeah.
I started listening to you back in October 2022 and have missed very few episodes since. It's been real fun and opened me up to trying a bunch of games I wouldn't have otherwise, such as Savage Worlds, Cortex Prime, and 7th Sea. Oh, yeah, Violent Menace is throwing a little party right now, I'm sure.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't like that right there is just great to hear.
Yeah.
Even before we get to your question, it's great to hear that you're open to playing more different games.
And those are different. Those are very different from each other.
You damn well know that's a crusade I'm on, is to get people to try different game systems, So my questions are, how do you maintain interest over a longer campaign? I find whether I'm GMing or playing, I'll eventually get super excited for a different story or character idea and lose interest in what I'm playing currently, regardless of the fun everyone else is having. As a GM, it's not the biggest problem in the world. I just run short campaigns that are only a few sessions long, but even still, it limits all-time highs in storytelling you can achieve due to the scope of a 3-shot. As a player, it's also hard to deal with when everyone else likes their character. And it's fully a me thing, because the characters I play are interesting and nuanced most of the time.
All right. So, For me, I would say it's about completion. That's how I keep my focus. And I understand that it's really up to the players / characters to complete those things, which makes it weird to say that. But, like, I can't let things die like a fart in a car. Mm-hmm. Right? I can't just let it fade and then it's gone, right? That doesn't feel right.
You finished your D&D campaign, come hell, high water,
right.
Cancer.
Changing the freaking system if I have to.
15 years.
Yeah, I mean...
Stacks of house rules. You are going to finish that campaign.
I would.
And you're going to like it.
That's right. I have to railroad you guys to the finish.
Yep.
But the point of the matter is that, like, I need that wrap for my head, because, like, I am too creative. I will go somewhere else. And there's something about that I feel like, because I created it, if I walk away from it, I'm doing it harm.
Yeah.
I'm abandoning it.
Yeah, that's...
And I just... There's a term that I know a lot of other people have heard, but my father said it, and I don't know where our fathers' fathers got it from. But the idea of half-assed. Don't leave something half-assed.
Uh-huh.
And, like, I don't know where they learned that crap from, but it sticks in my head.
Yeah.
And it's terrible.
If you're going to do something, whole ass it.
Whole ass
yes,
it.
Exactly.
Whole ass the thing. But, like, that's my thing as a DM.
Yeah.
Is that if I look at something, I want it done.
Right.
I want to wrap. It doesn't have to be wrapped with a bow, but it has to be finished. And sometimes the finish is a question mark that all the players come to at the end. They're like, "Oh, that's the new mystery," and we're done.
And we're done. Yeah.
And that's okay. But from a player side, when I sit down and play a character, I think for me it is that I have to ask why my character is sitting there. Why is my character part of this right now? And then as a player, I have to remember that it's my job to dig into that, to make that happen. I can't just sit back and be like, well, there's no good reason why they should be here. And I think you came to that realization with Ravana, was that you didn't know why Ravana was ever... So, like, why would Ravana stick around?
Yeah, I'm like, at this point, she should literally pack up, settle down with these nomads, and be their magical support witch.
Right. And I say, then move. If you cannot find a good reason, work with your storyteller. Figure it out, because the story can make a reason come out of nowhere. But if you're not making bonds, if you're not playing into the other players, if you're lone wolfing, that's on you. That's my point, is that
I suppose
games give you drives, like Mouse Guard gives you goals and bonds and things like that to help remind you why you're there. But at the beginning of the game, that's on you to figure out why you're there.
So I don't get the impression from Owenography's question, though, and he's in the live chat. He could probably answer this for us. Is that I don't get the impression that his characters are don't have a reason to be there. In that he's lone wolfing or anything like that. I get the impression that he's doing what I used to do in, like, World of Warcraft, altitis, where you're super happy, you're playing a priest, and you're main healing a dungeon, but then you watch a shaman toss around some chain lightning, and you're like, oh, that's badass, I want that. And then you roll up a shaman, and then you're throwing chain lightning around, you're like, this is amazing. And then you watch a mage just nuke a thing down with a bunch of fireballs, and you're like, oh, that's badass, I want that. And now you've rolled up a mate, And it's not that you didn't love the other two characters, it's just that the grass is always greener on the other side of infinite character possibilities,
Okay. I definitely see
and
that.
that I get. So that I can speak to, because I kind of do the same thing.
Okay.
I'm very quick to scrap creative ideas that I'm into. Like, when we made that thing, I was like, I'll roll up a new character. Like, I don't care. And you're like, no, keep Ravana. And I'm like, no, I don't care. I will destroy her. I have 7 character concepts ready to go, Rob. You know? And you're like, just hang on to her. Don't nuke it from orbit just yet, you know?
Yeah.
And you kind of talked me back from the ledge, but like, I do. I'm always willing to start new things, you know? Like when we played Ark, you know, and the video game, you know, people were like, okay, well, we're having server problems. Do we just want to nuke the server and boot up a new map? And everybody was like, no, we've got 3 years of memories there. And I was like, nuke it from orbit. I will start from scratch. I will build something newer and better.
But I think that's part of my point about looking through your character's eyes, is that when you're doing that, you're not. You're Sara looking at another character.
Right.
So you have to get back to the table and remember.
Exactly. So what I'm going to say is that from my own personal experience, and Owenography is backing me up in the live chat, says I'm on point on this one. Okay, so from my personal standpoint, this comes directly from my ADHD. Okay, this is my brain moving faster than my sense of propriety.
That's fair.
I need to slow down.
Yes.
And I need to stop doing things quickly and making mistakes equally as quickly. And it's just because, there's so many other things drawing my attention, and they look cool, and I want to engage with them. Recently, I have kind of made a pact with Sean when we watch TV shows. If we're going to watch this TV show, we are going to watch all of this TV show. And I don't care if a new TV show comes out, or you say, oh, hey, I just thought the other day of this other TV show. No. You put it on the damn list, and it will come after the series finale of the show we are currently on. Because both he and I were really bad about that. Just ADHD of just something shiny would get in front of us. We would be like, oh, hey, let's watch one episode of it. Oh, God, this is really good. And then we end up watching most of that series, and we never come back to the other one, and all these stories get left unfinished. Same thing happens at the table. Okay? What you need to do is sit yourself down in front of the mirror and say to yourself, Owen, stop it. Get some help. You know, calm down. It's okay. I know the grass looks greener on the other side of this.
That meme with like the girlfriends, you know, the guy looking over his shoulder. Don't.
Just be like, dude, calm down. And there will always be more games. There will always be other stories to tell. Finish this story.
Make a note. Put it in your book.
Let this character get to the logical end of their story. See it through. I promise you it'll be okay. There will always be more characters.
Yeah.
And make peace with the idea that there are dozens of character concepts that you will come up with that will never see the light of day. Maybe those characters become NPCs in your next game that you run, right? Like, those characters don't have to go to waste. You may never play them as a PC in a game, but you may get to NPC them, and their stories still kind of get told.
Yeah, sometimes you when as a storyteller, you play your character. You throw an NPC in that you had. And I love that. Like, I did that numerous times.
Yeah. And the great thing is, if you have put the time and energy into going, oh, I've got a great character concept, and here it is in its entirety, it's fully well-rounded, if you do include them as an NPC, you know exactly how that piece moves when pushed against. Because you've come up with the character, and you're enthusiastic about it, you know?
Yep.
Just make sure not to shove them too far into the limelight and make a DMPC out of them, but, you know.
Yep.
But you can tell some really interesting stories with your NPCs.
Very much so.
Yeah.
Very much so.
All right.
Second question.
What advice would you give to someone wanting to start their own tabletop-focused podcast? What have you learned that you wish you knew when you started? Marketing. That's it. Honestly, I think our format's solid. I think our topics were solid. I think we had good chemistry. Like, I think we have all the makings of a great podcast, except marketing. Neither of us understood how to do marketing. By the time we got started, it was kind of too late. And nobody, well, not nobody, because you're all here listening to this, but in the grand scheme of things, we are a drop in the bucket.
Very much
We are a very small, very tight-knit community full of wonderful people, and I love every single one of your faces. But if you asked me 5 years ago where I saw this podcast going, or where I wanted it to go, I should say, because I honestly thought we were a very much smaller drop in a very much bigger bucket. But where I wanted it to go was I wanted us to have tens of thousands of listeners.
Sure.
And I don't think we ever achieved that, but
no.
I don't regret what we did as a podcast, but I do regret that we didn't understand how to market ourselves to a bigger audience.
Yeah, and that we never were part of any network that would assist in that.
Yeah.
I think that's the other quality that was missed, was that if you want to be a tabletop focused podcast and you want it to be a thing, find a network. Find a network willing to take you in and work with them, and then find a lot of partnerships so that other people are marketing for you. Mm-hmm. You're just basically showing off your content, and at some point that will help you more than anything else.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I agree with that. I'll say the other thing is make sure you have 6 months worth of content in a simplified format ready to go.
Just queued up, yeah. Even if it's just topics that you can speak about in a week's notice.
Yeah, that's a great thing, and be prepared to be brief.
Mm-hmm.
It's a hard thing to do.
Yep.
So, yeah.
All right. Lastly, subject. What were your favorite episodes?
Seth, I loved Seth. I think that was great.
Seth is just amazing.
I think Seth was great. He was so much fun to have. We just wanted to keep talking to him.
We did. We spent like 20 minutes post show just shooting the breeze,
hammering the shit. He was so much fun.
Yeah.
Plain Geo was fun.
Plain Geo was fun.
That was a great show.
Another content creator we ended up talking to for.
We had a couple of really good shows at the end. We were just buzzing after them.
I really liked doing our campaign breakdowns.
Those were good. Those were cathartic
in
a totally different way than I expected them to be. Yeah.
I think the Savage World System Spotlight was transformative for me.
Yeah.
I ended up walking away from that going, holy crap, I didn't know this existed. This is amazing. And
it
utterly shifted the axis of my gaming for the foreseeable future.
There were a couple system spotlights that, like, when we got into them, like Savage Worlds, we were just blown away by their content.
Yeah.
Like, they were just wonderful and magical. And it changed how we perceived things. I think Kids on Bikes was kind of eye-opening.
Kids on Bikes was eye-opening, yeah.
It was really eye-opening of why it is what it is. I think that was a really good one to do. But I know we had some of our topic.
And anytime we did a Free League System Spotlight.
Oh my God. That was an inside joke.
We had this inside joke for, it was still kind of for the longest time, that our lips are firmly wrapped around parts of Free League's anatomy.
Because we just kept coming back to them,
and we're just like, this is such a great system. And ironically, I looked back because we were talking about the systems that we want to do, in our future. None of us picked a Free League system.
Not first.
So is Merkborg? Okay, Merkborg is Free League Publishing.
Yes, it's not
Free League Workshop.
Yep, it's part of Free League.
Okay, so Pirateburg
sits within
is Free League. Yeah,
it sits within it. So.
But yeah.
And
I gotta say, the is D&D hurting the hobby episode felt really good, because that is something I've been saying privately to Rob for 5 years. Even while I was running D&D, I had some of those opinions of like,
very much so.
And those opinions only got stronger, and it felt really good not only to finally sit down and just write them down and say them all on the air, but the fact that so many people seemed to resonate with it, and it was such a hit episode for us.
Yeah, I agree with that. I'm taking a look at... I'm just doing my brain went to the show list and just be like, what was one... Because I was thinking about one in particular, and I was like... What was that show that, like... Because there were a couple shows that we walked away from, and we were just so damn happy that we did them.
Yeah. I think most of the 101 series, too. I really enjoyed the 101
was
series.
A really good series. I think that was really good.
Because, like, kind of getting back to basics and just be like, all right, look, if you really are a new storyteller... I mean, we say in our intro, if you're a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, like, okay, but But we do kind of discuss higher level topics, like what if we got down to what is a role-playing game? How do you choose which game to play, you know?
Yeah.
How do you run your first session? What is an NPC, you know? It felt good to kind of get back to those basics and you know, put those things down so that we have a good, clean framework for people who want to you know, want to listen to those things.
Yeah, and like we did the show on liminal spaces, which I thought was really cool. It was one of our 202s.
Yeah.
I loved figuring out that was a thing. Mm-hmm. Like some of those times that were really good.
You want me, the famously trans person, to talk about transitional spaces for an hour? Got it. I'm on it, Chief.
Exactly.
Hulavu says it's recent, but the Hot Takes show was amazing.
It was a
we
good
had
show.
So much fun doing that show.
We did. That was a super
Yes.
fun. Doc Jason's show that we did with him on power dynamics.
Jason Cox, yeah. Dr. Jason Cox, yes.
That was fun.
Uh-huh.
Like, it was hard not to make that show 3 hours long.
Oh, it was. And Doc Jason is such an engaging person to sit and talk with.
Yeah.
It's probably a good thing we didn't go for 3 hours, because he was sitting 3 feet away from me and I got COVID like the next day.
You did.
So... I was like, oh God, please tell everybody.
Well, we had the
I'm so sorry.
We did have people talking about the A Magic Item Destroyed My Game show, which was good. That show was a really good one.
Yep.
I liked that one. But yeah, like the 101s were really good. I'm looking back at some of the titles on them, like yes. I'm like, yep, all of those were freaking fantastic. Just going back through some of these. Like Lawful Stupid, Plain Alignments.
Oh,
talking about doing that.
It's just you just say the title of that episode and it makes my blood boil again.
Yep.
I hate that.
Yep. Yeah, we just talking about breadcrumbing and stuff. God,
I think the real answer, Subjet, is that like there's 260 episodes, man, and we honestly, like, we had as much as we're like, okay, the show isn't fun anymore and we want to end it before we start to resent it, like,
yeah,
we had a lot of good times.
Yeah.
And we loved so many of the shows that we did. This is something we loved doing for 5 years. We wouldn't have kept doing it if we didn't love it, you know?
No, there was an amazing love for it. So the fact that, like, I'm looking at a piece of hardware my wife bought because she was concerned that if anything happened with the network or anything that we wouldn't be able to do the show. Mm-hmm. And she's like, you can get Mixlr on your phone and just plug in, and I got you guys two mics and an adapter so you could do it from your phone.
Yeah. So we could, like, take the show on the road if we wanted to.
Yeah.
We talked about that a little bit, like going to like a convention and doing like a live episode of the podcast at the con or something like that. Never materialized. COVID put the kibosh on a lot of that, and we just never ended up doing it. But yeah. Omenography says those you don't need combat episodes were great.
Yeah, no, they really were good. I think we got a lot out of those ourselves, like of talking through it.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that was another thing about the show, is just talking through the topics that we had. So much came out of it just from the research aspect that we learned about what we didn't realize we knew. Yeah, and we just couldn't put it into words.
Yeah, so many times in our planning sessions where we would be like, you would say something or I would say something, and one of us would be like, well, hold on, I don't know if I agree with that. And you'd be like, okay, explain, where are you going with this? Mm-hmm. I feel like it happens like this instead. You're like, okay, because this, and this. I'm like, oh, okay, this is a whole different branch we didn't even know we were writing about.
And suddenly we'd
someone
write
would
about
start typing, and it would come out on the show, and we'd have these angles just bouncing off each other, you know?
Yeah, it was really cool.
Yeah,
it was really cool.
Good.
So,
what do you say, buddy?
I think this is it. How do you want to do this? Do we want to do our standard closing and then our outro and just roll the music at the end and call it, or how do you want to feel this one out? Are we going to be able to say?
I need a moment, like.
Are we going to say what we need to say? Because, like, realistically, like, our Twitter is going to stay up. You will be able to find us on Twitter if you want to message us. Our Instagram will still be there. There might be stuff on it.
Obviously, we're not going to be broadcasting on MixLR anymore.
No, but our Discord's staying up.
The podcast we'll stay up on all the major networks and whatnot, so you'll still be able to find us there. And of course, the Discord's still there. So you can still absolutely join us on the Discord, even if you're listening to this, well after March 8th, 2024.
Yeah.
Sorry, May 8th, 2024.
Yeah.
You're still going to be able to find us online at the Discord.
And our thank you to our Patreon members who supported us. Thanks to you, the website will remain up probably, as far as I can tell, at least well into 2026.
Yeah.
And possibly longer, depending on how funding goes from that point. We may just and see where things at, but that'll keep us in all the streams, and our content will stay on YouTube.
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit on the Patreon itself, but just so everybody else knows, we had just enough funds in our Patreon basically to pay our bills and keep the lights on for a bit.
Yeah.
We've never personally taken a cent of Patreon money for our own personal stuff. It's always gone right back into the podcast.
So those coffers are going to stay for the podcast.
And what we've got left after the show is done now, we'll just stick around to pay the bills and keep the lights on.
Yep. So for those who probably are listening to this through the web, before every show, we always would play some music from Arcane Anthems. We watched Arcane Anthems grow. Yeah. And that guy is doing amazing stuff. I am glad he is where he's at. I hope some of our music helped with that, but honestly, he's done a great job. Yeah. So hats off to him. Guy Frog is interesting. We actually reached out and paid a chunk of money to Guy Frog to thank them for putting together a song that came out of literally a request from his sister of hey, could you make a Game of Thrones kind of opening song? And on that challenge, he did. Mm-hmm. And that's where our intro came from. And he thought it was hilarious. After 2 years, we were still using it. And here we are 5 years later, and it's our flag.
We talked about changing our music occasionally, and we just never did. And we're no, it's great. So, why should we?
Yeah, and he's done a few songs and some other stuff. He's back on YouTube producing some content, different than music. But, it's our signature piece. And we never found or were able to contact Mid-Air Machine. It just never happened. I tried a few times and never got a response back, but the content's out there, and I think it's a good ending for us.
I really loved the name, actually. Mid-Air Machine just sounds cool.
It really it reminds me way too much of a 90s Depeche Mode kind of band, you know?
Yeah. Opening for Depeche Mode, stabbing westward in Mid-Air Machine.
There you go. See? Perfect.
Yeah,
perfect.
Exactly.
So, but we want to thank you guys from the bottom of our hearts.
Yeah, absolutely. It's been a real experience for all of us, and I can't put it into words,
Yeah. Do we want to do this now? Do we want to close this?
Yeah, I guess it's got all good things,
So I'll start the music, and you can kick off the farewell, and we'll do it that way.
Alrighty. So, farewell, friends. We want to thank you for joining us for Storyteller Conclave, a show that we sincerely hoped helped you run the best tabletop role-playing game that you can. Whether you were a new storyteller or dungeon master learning the craft, or an experienced storyteller looking to take your game to the next level, I'm Sara.
I'm Rob.
Saying goodnight.
We love you all.
And may your stories be memorable at all of your tables.
Always. Love you guys. Good night.
Good night.